So my name's Chuck, and I'm the disabled veteran and people with disabilities recruiter at the VA. And it's not even letting me advance the slideshow. Shoot. And we do a lot of hiring at the VA, and we've been hiring like gangbusters because of this pandemic that's going on, which is probably good that we are hiring, because some places are not. Healthcare in general is interesting. It seems like the marketplace in Northeast Ohio had come to a screeching halt with outpatient services, but we're still going at it as an employer as far as recruiting people and hiring. And we've had some of our largest new employee orientations in some time. And we have these hiring flexibilities that I kind of oversee as a special placement coordinator, where we have a hiring flexibility for combat veterans, disabled veterans, and people with severe disabilities. And then we also have a student employment program that we're going to talk a little bit about. But the advantage that I'm able to provide our managers and the group of people I work with is we're able to get candidates to managers faster through these direct hire authorities than if they go to our traditional application process, which is USAJobs. And we get to meet candidates and help them, and we work with vocational counselors to do that, and we work with see if this will work. So we do that through these relationships and the direct hire authorities. One of the key responsibilities that I have is providing information to people on how they could apply for jobs and what we look for in candidates. And I work with organizations to do that. And like CSU is a great one for me. It's really bothering me that the screen sharing is not seeming to work.
Live and learn. I'll have to do a better job organizing this next time.
No, it's fine. I'm just clicking on different things that keep popping up here. There, that changed. It looks different. So
boom,
sharing the screen now.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So I kind of talked a little bit about working with the organizations in my role. And now we have the non-competitive hiring. So there's two types of hiring process. The non-competitive hiring is basically what we would call a Schedule A hire or a Veterans Recruitment Authority hire. And it allows us to hire eligible veterans and people with disabilities without them competing for the job. And then we have the competitive hiring. The competitive process, applicants go through the structured process, which is like USAJobs.gov. Okay. So the basis of the hiring authority is it's an accepted service authority that allows agencies to appoint individuals, including veterans, with either mental, intellectual, or physical disabilities. The agency's vacancies, you could apply to a vacancy if you fit that category, or you could meet the direct hire authority through a vocational counselor that would work with me to help get those. We have to show proof that we are a person with a disability if we're going after Schedule A. The proof of a disability is a letter from a vocational or medical provider. And the next slide, I think, has sample letters and a link that I will not click on because I'm paranoid that I'll get that to the wrong spot again. So the sample Schedule A letters, if anyone has a question about these, I could email this link and provide more information afterwards to this group. But the key to the letter is it has to be on the professional's letterhead and it has to have a signature, but it doesn't have to say why a person's disabled. Okay. And that's important because if I screw up and I give the letter to the wrong person, I essentially have maybe provided an opportunity for somebody to be discriminated. We have for the veteran hiring, we have a Veterans Recruitment Authority. Not every veteran's eligible for this hiring authority. It has some unique criteria, one of which is They have to have served during a war and are in receipt of a campaign badge or expeditionary medal, or they are a disabled veteran, or they received an Armed Forces Service Medal for a military operation. So that's a little bit more than just a regular ASM medal that a lot of veterans have. Another way to be eligible is somebody that discharged from active duty within the last 3 years. Active duty for a Guard or Reserve member would essentially be a Title 10 activation, or it could be somebody that served in an active component. But active duty doesn't count the weekend military service for a Guard or Reserve, and it doesn't count any of the training for the Guard or Reserve. Does that make sense? Okay. So when we're on USAJobs.gov, there's some key things to look for. And everybody that's on this call is a veteran. So if we look for the green shield for jobs, and we'll get to USAJobs and we'll look at that. The green shield's a good icon to look for. And also, if you have a Schedule A letter, the universal symbol for disability also is there. And then those two categories are also eligible to apply as a U.S. citizen to any job that's open to all U.S. citizens. Okay. Some things to look at on USA Jobs and to be aware of is the closing date for the job posting, because the closing date by midnight of that day is when the application has to be completely submitted, and there's not a way to add any more to it at that time. Another thing to be aware of is, what is the pay? Is the pay realistic to what you're looking for? And does it provide enough for an individual to provide for their family? And the other is, what are the requirements and what are the qualifications, and how do you demonstrate that? How do you support all of that stuff? So in doing that, we have to read closely. And then the last thing is, what's the best format for the resume? And the best format for the resume, I recommend the resume builder on USA Jobs. Okay. So here's kind of the flow of what happens. And there's 9 or 10 steps to the actual application process. And the first 5 are on the applicant side. And then the remainder are on the job seeker side, or the agency side. So the applicant creates a profile on USA Jobs. That takes a few minutes, searches for jobs, reviews jobs announcements, prepares their applications, and submits to the agency. And by prepare application, that could mean that we have to have some supporting documents in there. So some positions require a licensure. So you want to have the license there. We have some driving positions that require a driver's license. So you probably want to have an image of your driver's license be part of the application. Or maybe if it's a clinical position, there's a nursing license or an STNA certificate, or a peer specialist certification. You want to have the certificates be part of what you use to apply. Sometimes there's training requirements or education, so you want to have transcripts be part of your application. So this is USAJobs.gov, what it looks like. And I'm going to try something. Did it change to where it looks like I'm logging into Zoom on your end?
Yes. Yeah, we see your web browser.
Perfect. So this is USAJobs.gov. You click on the sign in, and that allows you, if you don't have an account, you could create an account. I could enter my own stuff here, and we could do that. Please try to keep everything between that I do on the professional side. So don't use this email to try to get a hold of me. Okay? Does that make sense? Because I don't really.
Makes perfect sense.
I don't check it that often.
Yeah.
But USA Jobs has 2-factor authentication, and it gets frustrating for a lot of people because a lot of folks don't realize that a thing like their cell phone number is an important thing to maintain. Because I've logged in the past, it didn't require me to do that. But now we're back to the same screen. But a lot of folks, when they change their cell phones, they change their numbers. not necessarily in the collegiate age demographics, but in other age groups. They get a new phone. They think that all the life's problems go away with that old phone number. Well, if they had an account on USAJobs, they have to rebuild everything because they won't be able to log in without the second factor of authentication, which is a text message with a code. A lot of banking applications use that system. It cuts down on identity theft. So now that we're on USAJobs and we're logged in, we could search for a job, or we could look at the resume builder. So if we look at the resume builder, we'll go there. And it's pretty cool because it asks you to name it, and we'll just name it a test resume. And then it asks you to add work experience. And what's nifty about this is the important part about a federal resume is the date that one started a job and the date that one ended the job, and what did they do specifically at that position. And in using the resume builder, it kind of forces you to use that format because we're measuring experience to qualify people. And if you don't tell us when you started and when you finished a job and what you did there, and essentially what level of work were you doing, there's not a way for us to qualify you for that given opportunity. So a lot of resumes have a skill section at the top, and a lot of people work very hard to develop the skill section. But if we don't apply the skills to a position that we've done in the past, either paid or unpaid, it's hard to qualify one for that kind of job. So that's just a quick look at the resume builder. And a resume on USAJobs could get really, really, really robust and really long. I just printed mine for some reason, and it was 11 or 12 pages, which is contrary to what academic support services say, or job placement services at the school says keep it to 1 or 2 pages. But sometimes we need to really demonstrate that we have experience in a given area, and the only way to do that is to go as far back in our work history as we can to highlight some experiences relevant to the job that we're going after. And what's nifty about the federal government, unlike other places, is experience doesn't expire for us. So if I did something in 1995, it's the same as me saying I did it today. If the job that I'm going after requires that kind of experience from 1995. Okay. So we're going to go into a search, and I like to search by geographic area first. So we could search by zip code, and I'm going to remove all these filters because that's my regular job search. So 169 jobs open in Northeast Ohio, but I'm going to narrow it down a little bit. I'm going to narrow it down by jobs that are open to the public, jobs that are open for veterans, and jobs that are open for people with disability. And I cut it in half. I'm down to 180 jobs. Now I'm also going to narrow it down by where do I want to work. Now I get paid by the VA, so I'm going to say I want to work at the VA. Okay. Now I'm down to 35 jobs. Now the next thing is I'm going to narrow it down to my occupational series that I'm interested in. When you were, and I just clicked on show all jobs with 0 series groups. When you were in the military, you had an MOS. The MOS had a specific training school that you graduated from, a set of skills and qualifications that you were tested on and able to perform. And the MOS could be used by somebody in the military at the Pentagon to determine if a service member had the capability of performing a function, and then they could deploy that person to a new unit, or transfer them to a unit, or transfer them to another part of the world that needs something done, and they know that they're capable of doing it. It's a lot like the spec sheet of an automobile. The spec sheet of a Jeep Wrangler says the thing could drive through 20 inches of water. It could have an approach angle of a certain degree. It could crawl and climb a certain way. Conversely, the spec sheet of like a Corvette says it could go really fast and take turns really well, but don't take it off road because you're not going to be able to do it. And the whole thing's under 30 inches tall, so it's not going to be physically able to go through 20 inches of water, or you'll be swimming, and you don't have the James Bond feature where you can take it as a sub. So the spec sheet is kind of like that, and the occupational series are kind of like that. So we have from 0, 0, all the way up to 9,900. And these kind of have a meaning to them. So 0, 0 is going to be all kinds of health and safety kind of things. So police officers are 0083. A lot of veterans want to be a police officer, so we'll click on that one. Right now, there's not an opening in Greater Cleveland for a police officer. 01 is social services. So social workers, psychologists, peer specialists. So the 0101 is I think the one that's going to be our peer specialist, rehabilitation counselor, peer specialist. 0185 is the social workers. Cleveland State has a great social work master's program. We have a social work aide or associate. That's a great position for a person that's getting a bachelor's degree in social work. Okay. 02 would be our HR related jobs. So we have HR assistants, HR specialists, and then EEO positions. Now, I know that these say there's 0 jobs open, but I'm clicking on all the ones that kind of align with what people study at Cleveland State. We have 300 series is our general administrative. So the 301 is a program specialist. A 343, 341 is your administrative officer, management and program analyst, support services. So this 340 range would be a great thing for somebody that wants to get into the management realm, but also, doesn't necessarily already work in the federal system. Then we go into the 400. That's our biology, lab services. 500 is accounting and finance. 600 is clinical. Probably our number one administrative kind of position is in the clinical occupation. The medical support assistant, 0679. But these are also like the doctors, the medical officers is 0602. Health sciences, this could be like a radiation safety specialist or something like that. Nurses are 0610. So the state has a great nursing program. 700 is going to be veterinary medicine. 800 is engineering and technical engineering, so architecture engineering. 900 is legal and claims. So legal and claims is a lot of what the Veterans Benefits Administration does with the adjudication of claims, processing loan applications for the Home Loan Guarantee Program. Social Security Administration also has a lot of 0900 jobs. 1000 is going to be your creative arts, photography. 1100 is contracting, on and on and on. When we get into these higher numbers, like the 3000 range, this is more your trades-based occupations. So the first half are your administrative positions, and we have some clinical stuff in there. And then your last half of this list are trades-based occupations. So now I created basically a search for these different jobs, and I included jobs that aren't open. So the next thing I want to do is I want to click on Save Search, and I want to name the search. I want to name it CSU, and I want to get dailies, maybe a little much to get the announcements, but weekly, most jobs are posted for 5 days at a minimum, 5 working days. So that weekly is probably your best bet to not get bombarded. If you pick daily, you're going to get a daily email with every job that's posted in the geographic area, at the agencies you picked, in the occupations you chose. And what's going to happen is, because it comes daily, it's going to become part of this routine that there might be some discouragement. I looked at the jobs. I don't see anything new. I already applied to all these. I haven't heard anything. And then after a while, we stop paying attention to that message. Whereas I think if you get it weekly, you might go a week or two where there are no new jobs posted. And then suddenly you'll get an update that, hey, there's new jobs on USAJobs for you. Does that make sense? That way you're controlling and managing your own search. Okay. So let's click on one of these that looks like it might be something that somebody could do that is possible for a recent graduate. So this medical support assistant advanced open to all US citizens is one of those kind of jobs. A couple things to look at. The pay starts off 40 grand a year because this is an advanced position. It's paying GS6 level. We have to apply by the 20th. So that gives us 3 days to apply. And we're going to be able to apply until midnight on the 20th. Good idea to not wait until then, but you have all that time. This job requires you to physically be here at the medical center. They're not going to pay you to relocate, and we have 5 vacancies. Okay. Here are the duties. This is the front line between the clinical staff and the external customers. We have to know a little bit about patient privacy. We have to know a little bit about options veterans have to get care at the VA and in the community. The Veterans Choice is the community care program. We have to process that's like a referral outside and retrieving medical records from outside. And this has to do with like a lot of frontline clinical stuff. Scheduling software, inputting no-show and cancellation data in the scheduling software. So if you worked at a spot where you scheduled something in the past, it doesn't necessarily have to be clinical scheduling, but you're going to want to highlight that you scheduled things in a software application if you did that. But the most important part of this job announcement is the ways that you're qualified for the job. There's not a certification, like a certificate. There's 2 ways to qualify. One is clerical or administrative experience in a similar capacity, and the other one is education above a high school degree or high school diploma. What's interesting though is at the GS6 level, that's not 100% accurate. It's accurate for this particular occupation because this is a hybrid clinical kind of occupation. So there's multiple ways to qualify a candidate. But the reality is a bachelor's degree typically qualifies for GS5 in an administrative career. So if we didn't have the required academic experience or the required practical experience, we would typically for a GS5 or above, we would need more than this level of education. So I just wanted to be kind of clear about that because it's kind of misleading for this occupation. So then here we have a description of all the qualifications, but most importantly, here's the specialized experience. This is really what they're looking for to qualify candidates for the job at this pay level. Okay. Patient scheduling, electronic wait lists, preparing for clinic visits, monitoring inpatient and outpatient appointments for access and response, verifying and updating demographics, insurance information, processing emergency and non-emergency transfers to other hospitals, basic eligibility, establishing clinical profiles, setting the copays and collecting them, and getting any sort of pre-authorization knocked out. These 6 areas are probably what you'll be interviewed on, okay? And they're probably a good idea to have them highlighted in your resume. So then, even though we already built a resume, we go back into the resume manager and we add our work experience that relates to this specialized experience or anything that's on this knowledge, skills, and ability section. And we add it to each place that we've done that kind of work. And it's going to get redundant, but that's okay, because high score is going to win out in the way these jobs are posted and competed. Okay. After we do that, we're going to apply. So you click to apply. It's going to say, do you want a resume? I put my resumes and I go based on the date that I created them. So I'm going to select a resume, and then it's going to ask other documents I uploaded. So I have my transcripts and a certificate and a letter of reference, maybe a rating from a prior employer. So I'm going to add all those documents. And it's going to ask me, have I reviewed them? I found the job by searching on USAJobs.gov. And I'm going to continue to click to the agency portal. And now we're going from USA Jobs into Application Manager, which on my end that I see is USA Staffing. So now we have the demographic information. We make certain that I have my right address in there. I'm not a veteran, so I won't claim veterans preference. But if you're a combat veteran, you're going to be a 5-point preference veteran. If you served during a period of combat, if you're a disabled veteran or have a Purple Heart, you're going to be one of these 10-point preference veterans, and it's going to be applicable based on your own service-connected disability ratings. Okay. This is a tricky question because I think we are all going to be E on this question. This is asking if we're a presidential appointee, if we've already worked in the executive branch under these direct hire authorities. So we're all E. And I think they're doing that question now because it's kind of the change of a political season. That question used to not be there. And now here comes the golden question. Do I have 1 year specialized experience at that pay level doing this type of work? Okay. And this paragraph here is going to match up against the examples of specialized experience that was in the other one. Here we have the electronic wait list for preparing clinic visits, for monitoring the outpatient and inpatient appointments, for areas of responsibility, for verifying and updating demographics. If you click yes, make certain your resume has this kind of information on it. If you're clicking no, it's not going to let you go much further in the process because I clicked no, so I already said I don't have the experience. So I want to go back because I just clicked no. Anyhow, you still have to pick what documents you want to upload, even though I picked them already. So you go through and you pick all those again. So I had a performance plan. I had a letter of reference. I have a transcript I think I picked. And you just pick them all, whatever ones. You got to make certain that you pick all the ones that you want to have included in there, or they're not going to go there. So I have a certificate, I have a letter, and I put my resume there. So that's all of them. Oh, my certificate should have went down here in professional certifications. And then I click continue. I acknowledge the supporting documentation. And then the next step is submit application. Now, I'm not going to submit this application because I don't want to add work to somebody that have to disqualify me for this job. But you could. I'll click it. Live reckless. So now it allows you to view the application. I'm on USA Jobs. It shows you how I answered all these questions. Here, this is going to exclude me right away because I clicked no. But I look at this and I realize, oh, I made a mistake. I need to look at that. And I just got an email that says I applied for a job. It happened that fast. I need to go. Oh. On Zoom meeting. It's not letting me go.
Congratulations, got a new job.
Yeah, it's not letting me go. So I'm going to return to USA Jobs. Oh, what did I do? And if I click here, now it shows I applied to 14 different jobs. I clicked on the wrong thing. Remember, I clicked on the wrong thing. So I want to update my application. Now it's asking me to look at all these documents again. I say yes. I found it on USAJobs. I say yes. I continue to the agency portal. And now it's going to let me go back and select that right answer because I reviewed it and I realized I clicked the wrong thing. Demographic information looks good. That looks good. That's still E. This is the one I want to say A for yes. Okay. Now I still have all those resumes on there, and I'm going to continue that. I acknowledge, submit my application. So now everything's right on there. I just got another buzz that application for medical support assistant was received. Okay. I don't know of a way to delete my application. So, which is kind of cool that there's not a way for me to get rid of it. I'll just explain to them, hey, I was showing people in a session what to do, and I'm not interested. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to change it so I don't waste much of their time. And I'm going to change that question back to no. And if I don't do it now, I'll forget. So forgive me for doing that.
No, I appreciate you going all the way through it like that. Like this is, you have no idea how nervous I am about how the next 2 months are going to go for me.
Okay. So, here's the next step is, we talked about including the dates, the hours, the level of experience. The hours are important. So like if we really looked at my resume, you would have seen that I have some part-time work experience on there. And the part-time work experience is from a local outdoor ski hill. And we credit years of service to qualify candidates. So I work 20 hours a week, 4 months out of the year. Okay. So if I work 20 hours a week, it would take me 2 years to work 1 full year. And because I work 1/4 of a year, it's going to take me 8 years to get 1 year of experience. Okay. Does that make sense? So you want to make certain that you give them something to measure. That way they could qualify you. And same goes for volunteer work experience. So you want to have that measurable the same way. Okay. You're going to want to use, like I use the hours I taught ski lessons to qualify me for an education position. So I made certain that I said I've taught over 2,000 hours because there's 2,000 working hours. Somebody's asking me, the person that helped me get on this, asking me how this meeting's going. You're gonna want to customize your resume with that specialized experience area, and then go back up to the duties and add to those things. You're going to want to use similar terms to address every required qualification. Okay. So the similar terms for every required qualification is, make certain you actually did it. I'm not saying you copy and paste, but use what's given you of what they're looking for, like an open book test to give yourself as much of an opportunity. Make certain your resume is organized and easy to understand. And I think if you use a resume builder, that's going to happen naturally. Don't get worked up that when you print your resume from the resume builder, it's going to look, the margins are going to be jacked up. Things aren't going to be centered. Don't worry about that. Our managers are looking at content, and they're used to looking at resumes that come through USAJobs. I know a lot of folks get worked up on like it has to be on the, this fancy parchment paper and all that, and not for what we're doing through these applicant portals. And probably that's gone by the wayside from almost every other company. A good idea to have your job fair resume on the fancy paper and your attaché that you bring that you hold up like a shield. That way when you hand it off, but odds are that company that you're meeting with at that job fair is going to still send you to a web-based portal to do the application. And then, it doesn't matter what paper it's on, but you want to, set best impression you can. The federal government doesn't have a standard application form, which is kind of interesting. So the resume becomes your application. And if we think back to years and years and years ago, long before I started, there was a civil service test. And by the federal law, they're required to still test applicants. So the resume becomes the narrative test for the examples of specialized experience. Okay. The hiring agencies are telling you exactly what they're looking for in the job announcements. What's required, what's the responsibility. After you apply, the resume is used to determine if you have those required qualifications. So be very detailed. Don't assume that, if you're like an HR specialist. I have also been, at one time I was a medical support assistant. It used to be called a patient services assistant. At one time I was that, but it's not on my resume. So if I really needed to be the patient services assistant or medical support assistant, I would go back in time and really evaluate what did I do back when I was an MSA and make certain that, my experience from 1990 something is included on the resume. Because the resume that I have, it doesn't go back that far. Okay. Once the agencies determine you're qualified, they can use other assessments such as interviews or testing to determine best qualified. So an example of a test would be our paint shop uses a test. They'll have a board and they'll have somebody tools laid out, paint in a can, and they'll watch how somebody approaches painting the board, and they'll have multiple colors that they're supposed to paint in different areas. And the painters will evaluate how did that person do it. So that's an example of a test. Another one could be they could set you up at a computer and ask you to do a task on the computer. If you're a person with a disability and you use assistive technology, make certain that you've kind of asked for that technology to be available to you. If it's not available, you should be able to at least describe how you would accomplish that task. Ideally, they wouldn't have you do something that you couldn't do without an accommodation for a test. But I did have one guy that was visually impaired go on an interview, and they had him do a test on a computer, and he wasn't able to do it. So, yeah, it was frustrating. Okay. After we get through that part, the interview, we use performance-based interviewing. Performance-based interviewing is a lot like behavioral-based interviewing. The career services probably has been coaching folks on behavioral-based interviewing. But that's the interview style that we use. Okay. The best way to get through those behavioral-based interviews is to describe the situation where in detail, have it address the actual question that was asked, and my opinion is have them end positively. Okay. Here's, I don't know where this is opening. We'll get it over here. Here's the VA site for performance-based interviewing. And what's cool about this website is a lot of places when you do an internet search for behavioral-based interview questions, they give you 4. But when we click on the sample questions part, it'll open an Excel or Word document, whatever one we pick. And it will have several hundred questions that mirror what it was called the high performance development model that the VA used. So we used creative thinking, customer service, flexibility, adaptability, business acumen, interpersonal effectiveness, organizational stewardship, and personal mastery. Okay. Systems thinking, I think, is business acumen. And technical skills. So you could go through this and you could look at all of the level 1 questions, because folks like you and me were level 1 kind of folks. Level 2 would be maybe the supervisors. Level 3 would be the maybe the section chiefs. And the level 4 questions would be the service chiefs and high-level administrators within the VA. Okay. And you could use these questions. What I do is I narrow it down I prepare a little sheet, and I don't know if we're going to be able to see this, but I prepare a little sheet where I think I predicted what type of questions are going to be. And I have my little note of what highlight I'm going to talk about. Should I get a question about customer service? Should I get a question about being flexible and adaptive? Okay. I also, in my interview prep, I prepare a lot of these sheets for the interviews, but this is, on this side, this is how I'm evaluated. So I'm going into there with what was in the job announcement, knowing that these are the factors that they're going to use to rate me. So I'm going to try to stick to these areas and incorporate them into my answers. Okay, does that make sense? Because if I don't address what they're evaluating me on, I'm not going to score very high on the interview. What's difficult to predict is when they're asking us a question, we don't know what factor they're really using to evaluate us on. So I approach each one of these questions. Part of your job is documenting work. Give a specific example of doing something you had to write for your supervisor in the past 3 months. What feedback did you get for the supervisor? So in documenting my work, I was asked by the supervisor to, this is just an example, to prepare a document highlighting the benefits of working at the VA. So I prepared the document. I emailed the document to the supervisor. I worked with our medical media department to have it gussied up, printed colorfully and with logos and stuff like that. And I've shared this document with applicants that are not yet working at the VA. So in doing that, I've addressed pieces of technology I've used, email, I've addressed communication tools, I addressed working with multiple folks, our medical media department, and I've addressed how I've used that document. The feedback is the manager loved it, and we're getting our higher quality candidates are staying longer because they understand the benefits. That's the feedback from the supervisor. I could have just said, I prepared a marketing piece that talks about adding, benefits, but I missed some points in how we interviewed by not talking about technology. I didn't talk about tools that I used, because they could have been really asking about what kind of technology have I done and what things have I done to remain technically proficient. It could have been the rating, even though they were asking the other question. Okay. Let's figure out how to make this smaller so I can move it off. Getting good at this. Okay. So I think that's the interview process continues on. They score the interviews. High score of the interviews, high score of the application gets added together, and typically high score is the one that's offered the job. Okay. I think that's the end of the slides. We have some time left for questions, or do we got to get back to class?
No, we absolutely got time for questions.
Okay.
Can you click there's at the top of your screen, there's a button that says stop share.
Stop sharing. Perfect.
Yep. So I can get back to you, and then let me cut your spotlight off so the camera records all of us. I'm gonna open the floor up to our 2 visitors first. So Francis, do you have anything that you would like to talk to Chuck about?
Yeah, I guess I do. So you mentioned when the applications are being scored, are they going through like an automatic process, or is somebody actually looking at them before they go to the hiring manager?
Somebody's actually reading them with their eyes. Now, they might use a word search or something else, and they're reading it with their eyes to assist them, but they're determining who's qualified and who's not qualified. It's people doing it. It's not machine technology. It's not AI. A lot of employers, their applicant tracking system uses AI to screen out, and ours does not.
Okay, so for different agencies, they might be using that though?
Yeah, some other agencies might be using it. So I know some other employers are.
Okay.
And there's ways to, get around that. If they do, if they're using some predictive technology, you could include in your documentation, you can actually include the job announcement, and then it'll screw up the AI, and it'll force somebody to read it to disqualify you.
Okay, interesting. And then when you're building the resume and using work experience and stuff, do you add in a specific section for each KSA or like a keyword, or do you just kind of build it regularly and just naturally put in the KSAs?
I build it regularly and naturally put in the KSAs.
Okay.
So like one of the ones is and I adjust my resume and I stack up the jobs because they're not required to go in any given order. I put the ones that I feel are most pertinent to the position that I'm applying to first. And it's kind of cool. The USAJobs application or resume builder allows you to toggle up and down experience. So for the training specialist, I have my ski instructor job on there first because I'm on the ed staff at my local ski hill, and I do some of our new employee development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that. Was that like more of, I thought that was more like whichever one was most recent.
Well, you could do it that way too, but I'm of the mindset that you put whatever's the most pertinent up first because people are reading it with their eyes, especially when you have a document that's, half dozen pages long.
Right.
You don't want them to overlook what you think puts you above, somebody else.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Stephanie, you got anything you would like to talk about?
No, I appreciate Bike Invest putting this on. And I'm just dipping in between classes and office hours, and it's always just good stuff to know because when you're on active duty or you're serving, everybody say, oh, I'm gonna go work for the government and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that without really having an understanding of what that really means. So I appreciate it.
So, in speaking of going to work for the government after military service, there's some huge benefits to that. One of which is essentially you could continue to serve your country, and if you didn't retire from active duty, you're able to purchase back your military service and apply that towards your time towards a pension, and your military service also counts towards your time for leave earnings. So we have two different leave banks for federal employees. We have annual leave, which is like your regular vacation time, and we have sick leave. And annual leave, there's three leave groups. It's first leave group 1, it's 4 hours per pay period. Leave group 2 is 6. Leave group 3 is 8. You achieve leave group 3 after 15 years and leave group 2 after 3 years, I believe. So if you serve 2 years active duty, you could, after 1 year, you bumped into leave group number 2 because that time, whether or not you bought back your military service or not, that counts towards your time in service. It'll also be recognized in your service pins for years of service in federal service. Now, if you're retired, it's a different ball game because you wouldn't want to give back your pension to get that. So the folks that retire, they start off in leave group number 1, and they start off, they don't have the ability to buy back their time to apply it towards their pension. Okay.
Awesome. Hey, Stephanie, just so you know, we did record this whole thing and I'm going to upload it to our YouTube page. I'm going to be graduating in a month, so I'm actually going to be going back and viewing this video multiple times. So I'll be sending it out within the next 2 weeks or so once I get a chance to trim it down a little bit. if nobody else has anything, I'll just go ahead and get to some of my stuff. I think what's going to end up happening, Chuck, is I'm probably might just contact you directly if I have some questions, because I'm going to have some questions.
Right.
I had one student question in advance, which was, what is different about applying to USAJobs? You actually just answered that question with that last part you said there, and then also the whole discussion that you had with that resume builder. I did not know that that was a thing. I have now I have 3 resumes. I have my 1-page resume. I got my one and my front and back 2-page resume, and then I've got my 10-page resume, my cumulative vitae, whatever.
Mhm.
My question for me personally to you is, so in a month from now, I'm going to be getting my 3rd degree. It's a master's degree. All 3 of my degrees are in wildly different things. How do I talk about my education in this process? And like, do the courses that I take, do I treat them not like relevant experience, but like similarly, as in the way that I would talk about an education? If one of my degrees is very, very good for this particular job, would it make sense for me to list the classes that I took?
Well, I think it could, and I also think it's important to include your transcripts. And it gets kind of goofy the way the system works. Is you saw when we were in there, it lets you pick one document for transcripts. So it would make sense to have all of your transcripts from all 3 degrees in one file. Same thing, like I have, there's a document, if you already work for the federal government, you have what's called the SF-50. Well, sometimes they're saying to qualify for a job, you have to have experience in this occupation demonstrated on the SF-50. And at the same time, they're saying you got to have your most recent one to be considered for the job. So I have a document that has 10 years of SF-50, any pay grade or any pay impacting transactions that took place. When I went from one job to a next, I have those, the start and finish of those SF-50s. So I have, when they look at mine, they're looking at like 6 of them, right? Because I don't want to risk the fact that they're asking for somebody that has a communications background, and here I'm an HR occupation. I don't want them to rule me out, even though at one time I was the public affairs specialist. So I kind of work it that way. So I would have all the transcripts in one file, and there are some occupations that the federal government has that have required coursework. So to be an accountant in the federal government, you have to have a certain number of credit hours in business finance, law, accounting, or statistics, right? To be a contracting officer, you have to have 24 semester hours that include basically those same things and some other things. What's interesting is, to be an accountant, you don't have to have an accounting degree. Whereas other places, for you to be an accountant, they're requiring a degree in accountancy. So you could have a finance degree and still qualify for an accountant. You could have a business degree with a minor in finance and still qualify because you had enough credit hours. Does that make sense? Does that kind of answer your question? Or
Yes, yeah. Basically, just include everything, and however I can format it the best way possible. So, like my CSU transcripts, they have every single thing on them, but it's the only one that I would be able to pull that would have all of it on there would be the unofficial one. So it's just things that I got to kind of think about. I'm going to be looking in a very wide range of areas, from emergency management to policy analyst, to get my foot in the door. It doesn't really matter to me as long as it's going to pay the bills. I have no desire to stay or move or whatever. I would, of course, prefer to stay here and get a job locally. But if I can get a policy analyst position with the Department of Interior in DC, I'm gone.
right, understood. And so the other thing to consider about federal jobs and nonprofit sector is the student public loan forgiveness program. So if you have a direct loan and you work for a government entity, a nonprofit entity, and you make the regular recurring payments that are set by, I think they're income-based payments, after 10 years, the principal of your loan is paid off under this program. It started under the Obama administration. It continued under the Trump administration. And every once in a while, I'll hear some negatives about this program, but I think some of the negatives are some of the loans that people were paying on were not direct loans, and they weren't applicable to that program. So, it's just a matter of
I
making
will
certain.
have to check that out. The GI, or I got my first degree on active duty. My second degree I paid for with the GI Bill. This degree was a mixture of the GI Bill, and then I also took loans so that I could continue my fancy lifestyle.
Mhm.
And so I'm gonna have to look into that, because as a graduate student, I had to take the unsubsidized direct, the bad of the two. So I'll
Right.
have to look into it.
But you're going to make certain that they're direct loans, and then like there's going to be consolidators, and I think the schools do a better job of when you graduate, they send you through like a finance course to get your degree conferred. You have to go through the course of what your obligations are. That didn't happen years ago. But always, if this is like appealing to you, you got to always make certain whatever you do with the loans, they stay in the direct loan family. Because
Okay.
if you take them out of the direct loan, then they're not going to be eligible for that public service loan forgiveness program.
Will do. I am going to actively pursue federal employment. But I'm not gonna do it until I graduate. I'm graduating a little early, so I had to really put my foot on the gas here. So I'm just gonna really focus on December 13th, them giving me that piece of paper.
Mhm.
And then on December 14th, my new job is to look for a job.
Fair enough.
So I might reach back out to you again. I'll be leaving this position, but the people who are taking over are great. As you know, George will still be here and Josh will also still be here. Thank you for letting us record this.
No problem.
That's really, really big, because a lot of, time is very difficult for people.
Right. Try to edit out my fiasco of not knowing how to log in.
I already know. I already wrote down a marker point where you said Chuck Bonacci, blah, blah, then you did your spiel. There's going to be a little bit in there that I'm not going to be able to get rid of in the middle when you figured it out, but I'll get rid of that whole first couple minutes. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. I literally was clicking on the link that said join meeting, and a window would come open. I would click yes, and nothing would happen. And I tried it in 3 different web browsers, and thankfully George sent me a text and said this. And then I literally had somebody else come in and say, what do I need to do? And they're like, have you downloaded the app? And I'm like, no. And that was the same time I was trying to do it on my phone. That would have been really awkward. I would have been holding up my phone, spinning around.
Yeah.
So we would have still got it done.
Well, this is the first one we've done since COVID. So this is for the first attempt at this. I think it went exceptional. So I really appreciate it. And once I get my head straight, probably going to reach out to you directly just to see what kind of helping hand you can give me.
And same for anybody on the call. And the last thing I forgot to mention, because it wasn't on the PowerPoint, was we have pathways positions, and pathways jobs are student internships. And the way to find those is
I think Levon did a pathways in logistics there, and then now she's going to be accepting a full-time position.
So
and
a simple way to find them is you just type in pathways, and wait a second, what did I do? And then the zip code that we're closest to.
Hold on, share your screen again.
Oh, I got to share it again.
Yeah, just hit that green button.
Yeah, I did. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
See it over there? So now
Yep.
What I did was I typed in pathways 44106, hit search, and
Wow.
here we have.
Write that down. Because a foot in the door is really what I want. But if I can find that dream job first try, awesome. But pathways is I'll look at that too.
So there's like 3 different agencies. Social Security Administration has them, Park Service, and then this Office of Inspector General job.
Cool.
Okay. Super easy to find them. And, okay.
Awesome. Well, hope we didn't cut too much of your lunch.
Oh, we're good. Thank you so much for having me. This is way easier than like the other way of having to struggle to find parking on a college campus.
Did you hear that, Josh? Okay, good. Well, it's probably going to be Zoom next semester too. So we'll make sure we reach back out to you.
Yeah, we're going to be, this is the new way until everybody gets this vaccine in them, I guess. So,
Hey, Chuck, quick question. You still looking for a work study?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
We are. And it's our front desk in HR is what we're looking for. So if you have somebody that's or know a student that's interested in human resources, it's the intake person that sees all the forms and stamps them all in and gets them to the right people. So it's a great experience, and who knows if it ends up being a permanent job afterwards. But it's a great.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to put it out there. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Well, Chuck, I'll let you go then. Have a great day, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.